So, hi, Deborah. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Do you want to maybe just explain a little bit about what you do, and after that, what your first experience was, or maybe an experience with a first client, which made you realize that money is more about psychology than maths?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm Deborah Price, the CEO and founder of the Money Coaching Institute, and I pioneered the field, excuse me, of behavioral money coaching. It's been nearly 30 years now. The Money Coaching Institute, my company, has been around now for 26 years, but I've been doing the work quite a while. I am a former financial advisor, so I managed money for a very long time, nearly 20 years. So I have a very wide, deep relationship with money and the field of financial services. But what I noticed, was that as a financial advisor doing planning and investment management, creating portfolios, et cetera, is that it really didn't matter whether the person had money, a lot of money, very little money, or whatever, that money patterns and behaviors were very clearly driven by emotions, and that these emotions were driving decisions in ways that the client didn't really see or understand. But I went to school originally to become a psychologist. So I have a strong psychological background, even though I ended up not becoming a therapist. That was a lot of my early education. And I think human beings are the most interesting thing around to study. And so I had a really deep love of wanting to help and be of service. And then very accidentally, I ended up in the financial services industry when I was quite young, managing money.
Okay.
But it was clear to me something else was going on. And when I would talk to other professionals in the field, who were largely men, by the way, and at that time, like only 9% of the licensed investment advisors were women. So, men would just look at me and shake their head and go, yeah, there's clearly behaviors at play, but mostly people just, they would have opinions and judgments, like people are lazy or they just don't want to do it, or, and I'd say, I don't actually think that's the problem. I think there's something else going on. But the industry at that time had a very distinct, no, we're not interested in the behavioral side of money, leave that up to therapists, right? So when I went to write my first book, which was called Money Therapy, and published that in 1998, so I'm dating myself quite a bit here. One of the things I did was interview a lot of therapists when I was writing that book, and literally every single therapist, regardless of their training or background, psychologists, PhDs, social workers, whatever, every single one of them said, look, we don't know anything about money or money behaviors, and we don't want to talk about it either.
Really?
That's when I knew there was a big problem.
Yeah. I feel like there's more awareness now, though, right? Like it seems to be
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think we've done a great job of opening this space up and helping create awareness. And I've since written 2 other books, and, we've grown an industry. We have coaches in over 42 countries now, and this work is spread, but it's still, I would call, a field in its infancy, because too few people, Justine, as you commented earlier, really understand the emotional, behavioral aspects of money. And that's where we really, I think we really shine. I think we really know and understand people and money probably better than almost anybody. And there are people out there who have, tremendous academic backgrounds and lots of research now that supports our work. But we've literally been in the trenches now. For 26 years, working with people around the more behavioral, emotionally driven money patterns and behaviors. And so, there wasn't just one client that sort of drove me to conclude that the psychology of money needed to be addressed. It was literally being in the field and observing many people and being curious about that led me to both write books and do research and develop a methodology, which we now do and train the certified money coach training. So.
And what about women in particular? Because I speak to a lot of women who say that they feel like they're behind financially. They're women over 40 and they feel like they need to catch up. And part of it is they think they just need to save and invest more. But part of it's also, I guess, that their mindset or their psychology or the patterns are holding them back.
I think it's really common for people to think that if they just solve the practical side of money, they save more, they invest more, or they do something practically better, budgeting, blah, 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 that's going to magically change everything. And the fact of the matter is it seldom does. Because the research shows very strongly that all financial education and literacy programs and attempts for people, I can't tell you, people tell me all the various programs they've tried, but they abandon all of them eventually. And the reason for that isn't that they're not capable or they're not interested or have a strong desire for change. It's just they're trying to solve the wrong problem, because the reason people don't do the things they need to do are subconsciously driven and deeply patterned from early childhood. So a person needs to go in and sort of unpack what happened that caused them to have, for example, avoidance of doing the right actions. The avoidance is actually a symptom, not the real problem. So we look at the symptom and go, well, that's interesting. Let's delve deeper and try to understand what the cause is. The symptom is not the problem, it's the cause. And it doesn't mean the symptom isn't real at all. It is. It's just you can seldom solve it from that place.
Yeah.
And, I probably read 70 financial education research studies, and they say most even financial literacy courses fall apart for people between the 6th and 9th month. They'll just abandon it.
Wow. And there's so much funding going into that as well. It's really
millions and millions of dollars are wasted on financial education programs that really would be better served to put in behavioral, coaching and awareness. And by the way, the research is supporting now that behavioral money coaching actually not only changes people's patterns and makes them feel better about themselves, which is critical, by the way, because I think people by and large have low financial self-esteem. They don't feel good about themselves.
Especially women.
Yeah, especially women. So to your point, women say they feel behind. Well, there's another reason why women feel behind. And part of it is the mommy tax, the wife tax. The women, by and large, spend an average of 6 hours more per day managing household finances, if they are the finance person in the family, which they often are, but also, housekeeping, all of the house caregiving chores are unfortunately largely delegated to women disproportionately. So women don't have a lot of time extra to do some of these things. And so if you have natural aversion or avoidance dynamics and your plate is so full anyway, guess what? The last thing you want to do after you've done all that is go look at your finances and figure it out. So I think that there are both, our society continues to not understand that women worldwide are overtaxed in so many different ways. And believe me, I understand men have their own dynamic, but it's fascinating just to see that women have a mommy tax and often don't fare as well in corporate America, for example. They often struggle with time off, how to care for kids when they're sick, blah, blah, blah. They often end up having to change jobs more frequently because they need greater flexibility. Whereas when a man has a child, he often gets a raise. It's astonishing. Like, oh, you just got a raise. You need some more money. Women, not so much the case. They get dinged because they can't give to the same extent.
Yeah.
And they have to monitor and manage too many other factors. So we have, a situation with women in the world that needs better thinking and problem solving around how to create greater opportunity for women, but also greater compassion and understanding. And men, there are wonderful men who step up and really do support their partner around all of that. But I work with a lot of couples, and I will tell you, by and large, this is a big source of actual money conflict as well.
Yes.
Huge cause of a lot of money challenges between couples.
I wanted to, we're going to come back to that. But I wanted to ask you, because you talk about there's 8 different archetypes with, the way people think about money, and they're influenced in their unconscious, and that almost like, I don't want to call them personalities, but different money types, right?
Yeah.
Is that, are women more likely to be certain types, or are men and women kind of similar or like about the same in terms of like which archetype they're more likely to be?
Well, by and large, I would say that women have a more frequent high innocent archetype, because we are also socialized collectively to believe that men are better with money. And that's absolutely a myth that we need to dispel. Men are not better with money. In fact, I feel badly for men. And when I coach men, the sort of projection in the collective that you're a man, you should know, is just crazy. Well,
Yeah.
this isn't genetic. You're not,
Exactly.
there's no money gene, right? So men are not better, and men are not taught anymore or at all any more than women are. So we have a huge issue with, not only do we not get taught how to work with money effectively early enough, but we're never taught how to work with money from an internal place. We
Mm,
don't have, and our parents give us mixed messages. They don't model well. There are lots of conflicts in terms of dad is this way, mom is this way. And don't even get me started on children of divorce.
oh
There
God.
is an entire dynamic with children of divorce where the complications and money issues with children of divorce are by far more challenging and painful, quite frankly, because
Mm.
children are often triangulated between the parents. When divorce happens, the divorce is almost always the biggest issue is money. And children get caught in the middle of that, and that leaves an indelible mark on their patterns.
And just getting back to couples, what do you think is the most common source of conflict when you see, people fighting about money? I mean, it's a very broad topic. Obviously, there's so many different personalities coming into the situation, but
Right. Well, I think the number one single greatest issue with couples is that they simply do not know how to talk about money in a healthy way. So they end up in these circular conversations, where eventually, when that goes on too long, the couple, one or both of them, will just start to shut down and they don't want to
yeah,
do it at all. So that becomes an avoidance issue. And you can't solve anything if you're in avoidance or if the only thing you do is argue about it. So in couples work, we actually teach people how to communicate around money. We give them the tools. I feel like sometimes I'm like Cyrano de Bergerac, I feed them their lines and I'll go, okay, so I want you to say it like this. And they'll go, oh, thank you for giving me the words, because they don't have the language. We
yeah,
don't have the language, we've never been taught. And because it's such a highly sensitized subject, money's a core survival issue. And it
yeah.
triggers us at levels that are very primitive and instinctive, as well as emotional,
And
right?
especially for men, I've noticed this. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes the man is really, if she asks him a question about money, it's almost like she's questioning his status, or,
Mhm.
his role in society or like in the community. Like, it's just the money stuff is so caught up in who they think they are. Whereas, I think with women, it's almost like how people say, my work is my identity. It's more likely with a man that his work becomes his identity, whereas a woman, she's got, maybe she's a mother, she's like less
Right.
tied to that. And I think with money, it seems to be similar, no?
Well, I think that many people have too much of their identity entrapped in money in
Mm.
general. Work, and identity issues are prevalent, but more prevalent in the greater society is just that what I have and how much I have and what I wear and what I drive and the identity associated with that, especially with social media,
Mm.
leaves a lot of people feeling like either they have FOMO, they don't want to miss out. They want to have it now. They look at what everybody else is doing and having, and next thing you know, they're just going to go get it, even though it's not within their financial means or there could be consequences. But we are really externally driven human beings. rather than internally driven. And that's one of the keys that I really work with people, is that we have to start making our decisions from the inside based upon our values and the vision, what we're holding for our lives, for our family, for our children, and for the greater world. And if we can course correct and start making those decisions from an internal place, which is an archetypal dynamic in and of itself,
it's also going to make them happier.
they're going to be happier, and they will almost always make more money or be happier with what they have, at least. And that's a big difference. Many people have lots of money, but they're still not content. And that disconnect is not about money.
That's what I wanted to ask you about as well, because some people think that, okay, if you haven't got a lot of money, you must have some, that's the situations where you need to go and see a money therapist or a money coach to kind of sort that out. But there's actually people with a lot of money who have quite a lot of trauma around their money.
Absolutely.
What kind of
trauma is a big deal.
Yeah. So how does that kind of what kind of examples? I think you talked about a lady who got a lot of money out of a divorce, and we often see as well people who inherit large amounts of money. And obviously we've got the great wealth transfer coming in the next few years, where the baby boomers are going to be leaving a lot of money. So if people are not prepared, if their ideas around money are a bit traumatic or messed up, that's going to be pretty crazy, right?
Well, I always tell people, and I've written this, if you know you're coming into a windfall of money via inheritance, divorce, whatever it may be, the best thing you can do is get money coaching, because the statistics are a person who hasn't figured out their own money stuff, in usually 3 to 5 years, they've lost it.
Yeah.
They're either worse off than they started or right back to ground zero. So that's a bad statistic to, not pay attention to. Because what happens is our patterns, when we have less, are not as readily activated. So in other words, you can have a pattern that's there that doesn't get activated, almost like we have genetics, right? And you can have a gene. For example, I have the celiac gene, but I don't have celiac. But under the right circumstances and stressors, that gene switch could go on, and suddenly I could have a reaction. The same sort of basic idea, but it's not. No one's proven genetics around money, although we now have proven that there's such a thing as a hoarding gene. There are other kinds of genetically related dynamics. The tendency to be a risk taker around money can also be genetic. Gambling can be genetic, addictive dynamics can be genetically driven, but no one's really proven the genetics around archetypal patterns. But we do know, and Carl Jung and many other very well-known and respected psychologists have said, yes, this is part of the collective. These patterns, if they're archetypes, pretty much everybody's got them. So I like to tell people, everybody's got all 8 money types inside of them. It's just a question of who has the most speaking parts. So let's say you're going along just fine, and maybe you're an innocent with a little wing of the creator artist, and all of a sudden you get a lot of money. Well, that's when the gene, quote unquote, metaphorically, will get turned on. So it was latent, and then the volume gets turned up, and all of a sudden that person has money, and whatever the underlying patterns are, they're just going to start getting activated, and that person will usually make decisions based upon the patterns they have that are completely were obscured from their awareness until they had that much money. Let me just tell you what happens frequently is that people they'll either be, if they're a high innocent, for example, the innocent feels a bit powerless and they're not very good with money, and they get overwhelmed and anxious around investing and dealing with money. It's just as a result of what happened. And there can be some trauma underneath that's activated that fear, anxiety state. So as a result, that archetype, that woman is going to try to find somebody who will help her with that. Take that responsibility over.
That's what most women would probably do in that situation.
That's right.
They would go and see a financial advisor. But
or another man. They
Yeah.
might meet somebody and or next thing you know, that person's in charge of their money and they are not paying attention. So I do prenup coaching and also divorce coaching when clients want to keep attorneys out of it so that it's looked through the lens of what's fair. Let's make things fair so that you leave this, whatever it is, you either create a marriage that looks like what your intention is without getting the attorneys involved. Once they create an agreement, then I tell them, now go see your attorney. Because I'm not going to write a legal agreement. I'm just negotiating what's fair and practically right that serves the couple in a new marriage or a divorce. Because it's a sticky wicket.
Big, that's a highly emotional situation. And if they're already, coming at money from such different perspectives, and that's what they're fighting about, it gets really. Yeah. I've seen a lot of women who just end up really financially so much worse off after a divorce because they just don't want to argue. And he's really going for the money, so they're just like, you just take it because I don't want to deal with it.
Very common for women to just walk away because they don't want the conflict.
Exactly.
And quite honestly, I did the same in my first marriage. Just walked away.
Yeah.
And I don't actually feel bad about that at this point because I wasn't married to him very long. But my attorney was very upset that I did that.
And do you feel like you had time to rebuild your finances?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I wasn't really harmed, but I could have had a lot more. A lot more. And I just walked away.
Yeah.
Women are more prone to doing that by far.
Yeah. And what about you? We talked earlier about women having less confidence in their, how capable they are with finance. Apart from, because I know, especially in the US, that there is a culture of women expect that, men are good with money, but it's not the same in every country, right? I mean, in Asia, women tend to be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's the one continent that this is not so true in is Africa.
Right.
The African continent, by and large, women are way better with money and tend to be more money managers. And that's just how it is. And it doesn't mean that they are significantly more confident. It's just that they're usually left with that job and their men frequently don't feel like they want to deal with that. And women are by and large frequently the breadwinner as well.
Okay. But do you think that but why do you think so many women, at least in the West, who are intelligent, they've got degrees, they're very capable women, some of them are business women, but they're still underestimating on the investment side, their capacity to be able to manage this stuff?
Well, I think there is a lot of research around this that helps us to understand, but I don't think the average person understands that information is available to them. But the fact is that I think fear of loss plays a huge role. People think, well, I only have so much. If I invest and I don't feel confident in what I'm doing, or I don't trust easily, then it's easier to do nothing. Even if your employer's matching and you're getting 5-10% matches, there's a fear and anxiety dynamic which activates the instinctive brain. When the instinctive brain gets activated, the person is suddenly kind of frozen. Yeah. They get a little paralyzed, and part of that is physiological. And then if they have a history where there has been some kind of financial challenge in their life as a child or in their family, that pattern is already present, and the brain will activate and recall, oh boy, look what happened to my dad, or what happened to my mom. And so next thing you know, that becomes the baseline, and the person can't move forward unless they start to understand and can move forward, because now they realize that that's why they're doing it, right?
Yeah.
I don't think almost everybody has the capacity to learn how to do money at a practical level. well and even invest in a safe way, it's not rocket science. And because it's generally arithmetic, we know it can't be about the money. It can't be about the numbers. It has to be about the emotions and the behaviors, or what I would call hardwired patterns that are.
I love that you said it's not rocket science, because I said that to a male money manager, and he was like, yes, but it is very complicated, Justine. And that's because the financial industry makes it complicated. And
well, that's right. I have said, and people do not like it when I say this, but it is true. One of the ways to control people is to keep them ignorant.
Yeah.
To make them feel that they can't do it on their own. And I think this is fundamentally flawed. And I don't know that any financial advisor needs to overcomplicate it in order to prove their existence or validate the reason that they're doing what they're doing and why they're getting paid for it. I think they deserve to be paid for what they do, because if you're the person in charge of managing someone's money and you're doing a decent job and you're helping them sleep at night, you deserve to be paid. They shouldn't have to prove anything beyond that, really.
Yeah.
But, there's always been a lot of suspicion around investment people and what they make. I remember once when I was a young advisor that I was working, I had spent hours and hours with this couple, and they were a young couple with very little money. But I really liked them, and I wanted to help them. They were trying to plan for a new family, and they invested in some mutual funds with me, but it might have been like 50 grand. So on 50 grand, you don't make much money on a sale like that, right? But it's okay. I really wanted to support them. And at one point, I remember the husband looking at me and he goes, I need to know how much money you're making on us. And I looked at him and I penciled it out and I put the number in front of him. And I said, I'm pretty sure I could buy, some pencils and a notepad with this. And he looked at me and he goes, I'm so sorry. And I said, I think you misunderstand the amount of time and energy that we give as advisors on the front side generally does not result in a financial outcome that looks very good. And yet we do it anyway because it's necessary.
Yeah,
and
they don't mind.
Yeah, I said, I'm okay with this.
Yeah.
Hopefully at some point you'll have more money and you'll appreciate what I've done for you and you'll come back and we'll do more. But right now I'm okay with this.
Yeah.
And it's okay that you asked, right?
Is there a money myth that you've heard and that you think should be eliminated?
There's about 25, probably.
What comes to mind first?
I think, first of all, the greatest myth is that men are better with money than women. It's absolutely not true.
That was going to be my second
fundamental.
Question.
Yeah, and that's a fundamental problem.
Yeah.
But we've sort of talked about that a bit. And again, I have said to many couples, I feel very bad when we as women also, we could be feminists and very much in charge of our own lives. And then we get married and then we want the man to take over the money. And I'm like, what is that about? You were a feminist. Are you still a feminist? Do you still think that he's going to be better with money because he has a different gender and that's all. He has no better capacity than you do unless he has specific training and experience there. And you as a woman are better off holding your own power here and working together, right?
Yeah. And sometimes even when they do have financial training, it doesn't mean, like I said, the emotions get in the way. So even if you've studied, financial markets, I've met so many financial experts who know everything there is to know about different markets. But when you say, okay, what do you do with your own money? Oh, I leave that to the wife. She's more calm with it and, makes better decisions than I do.
Well, you're actually bringing up a point that I think people need to understand. The reason that financial advisors are really important is that when you're managing someone else's money, you can be much more objective.
Yeah.
Managing your own money triggers our patterns and emotions. But when I'm an investment advisor, which I hung my licenses, so I don't do that any longer. But as an investment advisor, I can be very objective. And I can make better decisions because I'm not emotional but I'm discerning and I'm using my knowledge and experience to make the best choices possible for the client, right?
And I suppose that depends on the person as well who's looking for advice.
Absolutely.
Like some people are
Absolutely.
going to be good at managing their own money, and other people really should outsource it.
Truthfully, most people should outsource it, in my
Right.
experience. And the
Because they're too
people,
emotional and too,
and inconsistent,
yeah,
very inconsistent, and lack the discipline to monitor and really pay attention. And so, unless you want to spend time, energy, and your own resources, and resources being not just money, but personal time, energy, etc., you're better off having a good financial advisor who you monitor and you meet with regularly, and you make sure that you understand what your statements are saying and you understand what's going on, and you do not ever give anyone authority without asking you about any investment trade.
yeah,
I had somebody recently who their financial advisor put $100,000 into a product that was completely unsuitable for them. And they made an enormous amount of money on that. And I was very upset. And I said, you know what? We're going to get your financial advisor on the phone because this is not right.
yeah,
And this is a lawsuit.
yeah,
And either he makes it right or you need to call an attorney. Right. So, we just need to stay awake and aware and use professionals appropriately. Appropriately doesn't mean you hand over your money and then don't ever talk about it or look at it or understand what's going on. And if you want to learn, know that you can learn and it's okay. But unless you really have the time, energy, and you want to spend it that way, it's probably not a great idea. And I wish that were not true, but I look at women and look at how much we are dealing with on a daily basis and how bombarded we are with taking care of what we need to. And you add that to the plate, I think it's a bit of a prescription for disaster unless the woman has a lot more time available to her.
Okay.
By the way, that's true for men too. So I'm not just saying that's a good idea just for women, because I don't have any belief that men are better at money or that they don't need financial advisors as well.
Okay.
And I have nothing invested in this because I don't do it anymore, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Excuse me.
Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, I just really enjoyed spending the time with you, Justine. I wish you great luck with all that you're working on in your business. And if anybody needs any assistance or money coaching, feel free to reach me. I'm at moneycoachinginstitute.com and Deborah Price.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Take care.